Ladies and gentlemen, when you look back over your life, I want you to understand something. You didn't make it this far by accident. You didn't survive the setbacks, the losses, the betrayals, because you were simply lucky. You have been covered, protected, surrounded by a force greater than anything this world can throw at you. Call it faith, you call it grace, you call it angels, whatever you call it, you need to know it's real. Some of you have felt a calm you can't explain. When the storm was raging around you, when everybody else was losing their mind, something in your spirit said, be still. That was a sign. That was proof that angels were standing watch over your heart and your mind, shielding you from fear that wasn't yours to carry. Some of you have felt that tap on your shoulder, that whisper in your gut telling you, don't go there, turn around to call that person, and you listen. And later, you found out why. That's not superstition, that's protection. That's divine intelligence working through you to keep you safe from what you couldn't see coming. You've seen the feathers, the flashes of light, the numbers that repeat, the symbols that show up when you need comfort. And in those little reminders, the universe is telling you, you are not alone. You are never alone. Those are your angels reminding you they haven't taken their eyes off you. Some of you have watched miracles happen in moments when you were ready to give up. The right person called. The opportunity appeared. The door opened. That timing was not a coincidence. That was God showing you, I am still here. I have always been here. Don't walk through this life believing you are unworthy of that protection. Don't convince yourself that you're ordinary. You have been chosen, equipped, and protected for a purpose. You are covered in ways you can't even comprehend. So when you feel the fear rise up, when you wonder if you're going to make it through, remember this. The same angels who carried you through yesterday's battles are standing guard over you right now, and they will not leave you. You are protected. You are watched over. And you are loved. Calm in chaos is not just a phrase you hear when people are trying to make sense of hardship. It is an experience that when you live it, you never forget. It is that undeniable feeling when everything around you seems to be breaking apart, but you feel a quiet strength rising inside you. You might look at the news or hear the stories of loss, sickness, betrayal, or uncertainty, and still there is this unshakable knowing that you are going to be okay. You might not be able to explain it to the people around you. You might not even understand it yourself in the moment, but there it is. Like a steady heartbeat that does not speed up, no matter how loud the world gets. When angels watch over you, they do not always show themselves in visible form. Sometimes their greatest work is happening inside your spirit. They hold your mind steady so that fear does not own you. They remind you of every single time you made it through before, every moment you thought you were finished but kept going. They stand guard over your thoughts so that anxiety does not drown out your faith. You feel this almost supernatural calm, even when your circumstances give you every reason to panic. It might be when you are sitting alone in your car after you just lost your job, and something inside whispers, breathe. It might be when you are sitting in a hospital waiting room, and everyone else is pacing and crying, and you feel this peace you can't put into words. That is not weakness or denial. That is a sign you are protected. That is the evidence that angels are near. This calm can feel so unnatural that you question yourself. You wonder if you have finally gone numb. You ask yourself if you are disconnected or just pretending not to feel. But when you search your heart, you know the truth. You are not numb and you are not pretending. You are anchored. You are held steady by something much bigger than you. When you feel calm in chaos, it is not because the chaos has disappeared. The bills are still unpaid. The diagnosis is still on paper. The relationship may still be ending. But the chaos does not get to decide who you are in that moment. The chaos does not get to tell you how to feel about your future. That is the power of divine protection. Sometimes the people around you will look at you and think you are in denial. They will ask why you are not more afraid, why you are not more upset, why you are not screaming at the sky. And maybe in the past you were that person. Maybe there was a time when any crisis would have knocked you to the floor. Maybe there was a time when you would have been unable to function. But now something has shifted. Now you know too much about who you are and who is watching over you to let fear have the last word. When you have felt angels move in your life, when you have seen impossible situations turn around, you stop giving chaos the authority to break your spirit. Calm and chaos can show up in subtle ways. You notice it when you can sleep through the night even though nothing is resolved. You feel it when you wake up in the morning, and for a moment you forget the problem exists. You sense it when you are able to laugh at something simple, even though your heart is heavy. That is not weakness. That is resilience. That is spiritual strength that has been placed inside you and nurtured by something unseen. The angels watching over you are not always fighting battles you can witness. Sometimes they are fighting to protect your peace. They are pushing back against every voice that tells you to give up. They are reminding you that no matter how big the storm gets, the storm does not have the power to steal your purpose. You see, when you feel calm in chaos, you are witnessing evidence that you are not alone. You are being shown that you are equipped to walk through the fire without being burned. The world has taught us to believe that panic is the only reasonable reaction to hard times. But there is nothing reasonable about divine protection. There's nothing logical about the way you can be standing in the middle of your hardest season and still feel gratitude in your heart. That is spiritual intervention. That is the hand of God steadying you when your own strength would not be enough. Some people never learn to trust that feeling. They think calm is just a trick of the mind, something temporary that will dissolve as soon as the next problem arrives. But you have the chance to recognize it for what it really is. It is proof that no matter how uncertain your circumstances become, you are rooted in something unshakable. You are planted in faith that will not be moved. You are surrounded by unseen guardians who are committed to your survival. You might not see them, but you feel the effects of their presence every time you refuse to let fear own you. When you look back on the times you felt most afraid, you will also remember the moments you felt this calm. You will remember sitting in your room, staring at the scene, thinking you had no idea how you were going to make it, and still feeling a quiet voice in your spirit telling you to hold on. That voice was not your imagination. That voice was protection. That voice was love. That voice was the sound of angels doing what they do best, keeping you steady when the world is falling apart. Sometimes this calm looks like courage. You stand up and face the situation, not because you are unafraid, but because you trust you are not facing it alone. Sometimes it looks like surrender. You stop fighting what you can't control and choose to rest in the belief that what is meant for you cannot be taken. Sometimes it looks like hope that refuses to die, no matter how many disappointments try to bury it. Calm in chaos does not mean you never cry. It does not mean you never feel overwhelmed. It does not mean you never wish things were different. It means that underneath all those human reactions, there is something stronger holding you together. There is a knowing that you are loved, that you are protected, that you are being guided even when you cannot see the way forward. That is a sign of divine presence. That is a gift. That is evidence that you are the woman whose house angels guard. When you find yourself in those moments when panic is knocking at your door, remember the times you felt this calm before. Remember that no matter how many storms came against you, you are still here, you are still standing. You have survived things you never thought you would. And every time you did, it was not only because of your willpower, it was because you were not fighting alone. It was because you were surrounded by a spiritual force that will never leave you. Calm in chaos is your inheritance. It is your right as someone who is loved by something greater. It is the legacy of every moment you have trusted when there was no reason to trust. It is the gift you receive when you open your heart to the possibility that you are being watched over, that you are cherished beyond measure. It is the quiet strength that rises up in you when the world tries to convince you that you are powerless. It is the undeniable truth that no matter what happens around you, nothing can destroy what has been placed inside you. Unseen warnings are the gentle nudges and sudden insights that come to you without any logical explanation. They are the moments you feel something isn't right, even though everyone around you insists everything is fine. You might call it intuition or a gut feeling, but it is so much more than that. It is the quiet communication of angels, the protective hand of something greater guiding you away from harm you can't yet see. When you are the woman whose house angels guard, you begin to notice how these warnings have shaped your life over and over again, even before you understood what they were. Sometimes these warnings come as a tightening in your chest or a restless feeling you can't shake. You may have planned to go somewhere, meet someone, or make a decision that seemed perfectly reasonable on the surface. Yet for some reason, every step toward that choice feels heavier than it should. The timing feels wrong. The energy feels off. No matter how you try to convince yourself otherwise, you can't bring yourself to follow through. Later, you discover that if you had gone forward, something would have happened. An accident, a betrayal, a loss you weren't prepared for. And in that moment of realization, you feel gratitude that you trusted that unseen warning. These warnings are not always dramatic. Sometimes they are just small obstacles that rewrote your plans. You might miss a bus or lose your keys or get stuck in traffic, and you feel frustrated because it doesn't make sense. But later, you learn that the delay protected you from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. When you are living under divine protection, you begin to see how even minor inconveniences can be blessings in disguise. You start to understand that everything happens for a reason, even if you don't have all the answers right away. Other times, unseen warnings come in the form of dreams or sudden thoughts that pop into your mind without invitation. You might dream of someone you haven't thought about in years and feel compelled to reach out, only to find they needed your help at that exact moment. Or you may wake up with the absolute certainty that you have to change direction in your life, even though nothing outwardly suggests it's necessary. When you listen to those messages, you discover paths you never would have found otherwise. You avoid pitfalls you didn't even know were waiting. That is what it means to be guided by something unseen. Many people learn to ignore these warnings because they are subtle and easy to dismiss. You are taught to rely on logic and facts, to trust only what you can see and measure. But when you look back over your life, you realize that some of your most important decisions came down to moments when you felt something you couldn't explain. Maybe you didn't have proof, but you had a knowing. That knowing was not your imagination. That was spiritual protection. That was your angels doing what they do best, whispering through your spirit in ways only you could hear. Sometimes these warnings show up as a voice in your heart telling you to slow down, to look more closely, to ask questions. You might feel uneasy when you meet a new person, even though everyone else is charmed by them. You might feel the urge to read the fine print in a contract you almost signed without thinking. You might feel drawn to take a different road home and later hear about something dangerous you avoided. These are not coincidences. These are reminders that you are never moving through life alone. You are constantly surrounded by guidance that is working to keep you safe. When you begin to trust these unseen warnings, you develop a deeper relationship with your own spirit. You stop second guessing yourself so much. You start to honor the messages you receive, even when they don't make sense to anyone else. You understand that sometimes your protection will look like missed opportunities, canceled plans, or closed doors. And while it can be disappointing in the moment, with time you see the bigger picture. You see how you were spared pain you were not meant to endure. You recognize how your angels were working behind the scenes to make sure you stayed on the path meant for you. You can't always explain these moments to others. You can try to share the story, but unless someone has felt that same pull in their own spirit, they may not understand. That is okay. The unseen warnings are meant for you. They are customized to your life, your purpose, your journey. They are the proof that you are deeply loved and watched over in ways that transcend understanding. You might remember a time when you felt an overwhelming need to leave a place immediately, even though you were enjoying yourself. Maybe you felt embarrassed to tell your friends or family that you had to go, but you listened anyway. Later, you discovered that leaving when you did protected you from something that could have harmed you physically or emotionally. In that moment, you understood that honoring the unseen warnings is an act of faith. It is a declaration that you trust there is more to this life than what you can see. The more you practice listening to these messages, the more clearly you recognize them. You start to feel the difference between ordinary fear and true spiritual warning. Ordinary fear is noisy and chaotic, filled with doubt and confusion. True spiritual warnings are calm but insistent. They are firm but loving. They do not demand your attention through panic, but through persistent knowing. That is how you tell the difference. Unseen warnings also teach you humility. They remind you that no matter how much you think you understand, there are forces working on your behalf that you will never fully comprehend. You are never as alone or unprotected as you fear. Even in the moments when you feel forgotten, the signs are there quietly guiding you back to safety. When you look back over your story, you will see a trail of these warnings, each one a marker showing how much you are loved. You will remember the phone call you didn't make, the event you didn't attend, the person you walked away from, and realize those choices were not random. They were acts of divine intervention. They were the moments when your angels whispered, not this, not now, not for you. If you ever doubt that you are being guided, take time to remember the times you felt these warnings before. Remember how they showed up just when you needed them most. Remember how they protected you from hurt, saved you time, or spared you regret. Let those memories strengthen your faith. Let them remind you that you have always been watched over, even when you didn't know it. Unseen warnings are a gift. They are a language spoken directly to your heart. They are the evidence that you are connected to something bigger and wiser. They are the reassurance that you do not have to see everything to be safe. All you have to do is listen, trust, and honor what you feel deep within your spirit. When you do, you will find yourself protected again and again in ways you could never have orchestrated on your own. Meaningful signs are those gentle reminders that there is something more watching over you, guiding you, comforting you when the world feels too heavy to carry alone. They are not always loud or dramatic. Most of the time, they show up quietly in the smallest details, in moments you might have overlooked if you weren't paying attention. When you are the woman whose house angels guard, you start to notice these signs appearing exactly when you need them most. You start to see that they are not coincidences. They are the language of the divine speaking straight to your heart. A meaningful sign can be as simple as a feather that appears in your path when you are struggling to trust that everything will be okay. Maybe you have walked down that same street 100 times and never noticed anything unusual. But this time, you look down and see a white feather resting on the sidewalk, untouched by the wind. It feels like a message meant only for you, a soft whisper that says you are not alone. You bend down to pick it up, and in that moment, something shifts inside you. Your shoulders relax, your heart settles. You remember that you are protected in ways you cannot always see. Sometimes these signs come in the form of repeating numbers. You glance at the clock and see 11, 11, 4, 44, 3, 33 over and over until you can no longer dismiss it as chance. You feel a little spark of reassurance every time it happens, as if the universe is gently tapping you on the shoulder to remind you that you are in sync with something greater. When you are praying for an answer or asking for strength, and those numbers appear again, you feel a quiet surge of faith that you are heard. You understand that even though you can't control everything, you are being guided by hands far more capable than your own. There are days when the signs feel more personal, like a song playing on the radio at the exact moment you need it. Maybe you are driving, fighting back tears, wondering how you are going to hold it together one more day. And then a song comes on, one you haven't heard in years, with lyrics that feel like they were written for you in that moment. You pull over because the message is too strong to ignore. You feel the words wrapping around your heart like a blanket, and you know with certainty that this is no accident. For B, you were meant to hear this reminder, meant to feel this comfort, meant to remember you are loved. Meaningful signs can also appear through people who cross your path. You might meet a stranger who says something that answers a question you have been carrying inside. You might get a phone call from a friend you haven't spoken to in months, reaching out at the precise moment you needed encouragement. You might hear someone's story and realize that you are not alone in your struggle. These encounters are not random. They are arranged by forces beyond what you can see, orchestrated perfectly to remind you that your life has purpose, that you are connected to a tapestry much larger than yourself. Sometimes the signs come in dreams that feel more real than anything you experience when you are awake. You dream of a loved one who has passed, and they tell you they are okay. They tell you that you are going to be okay. You wake up with tears in your eyes and a peace you can't explain, knowing that you have been visited, knowing that you have been given the gift of reassurance from the other side. Even if no one else understands, you feel it in your bones that the dream was more than imagination. It was a message of love and protection sent straight to your heart. There are moments when meaningful signs appear as sudden clarity. You have been worrying, doubting, overthinking every decision, and then out of nowhere, you feel certain. The fear that kept you frozen melts away, replaced by a calm conviction that you know what to do next. You feel guided by something wiser than your own understanding. You may not be able to explain it to anyone, but you trust it. And every time you follow that clarity, you find yourself in the right place at the right time. That is a sign. That is evidence that angels are working in your life, clearing the path even before you take your first step. Meaningful signs are not reserved for the moments when everything is falling apart. They show up in the everyday, reminding you that joy and grace are always available. You might see a butterfly land on your windowsill when you are feeling stuck. You might notice the sky painted in colors so beautiful you have to stop what you're doing to take it in. You might hear a child laugh in a way that makes your heart feel light again. All of these are small but powerful reminders that you are alive, that you are held, that you are seen. When you begin to open your eyes to these signs, life feels different. You start to look for them, not out of desperation, but out of trust. You know they will come when you need them, and you know they will arrive in ways that are perfect for you. You stop dismissing them as silly or unimportant because you realize how much they matter. You understand that each one is a thread connecting you to something holy, something that loves you enough to keep showing up in ways big and small. Some people will try to tell you that these signs don't mean anything. They will say it's all in your head, that you are imagining patterns where none exist. But in your heart, you know better. You have felt the shift inside you when you receive one of these messages. You have felt the peace that settles in your spirit, the warmth that floods your chest, the quiet assurance that you are cared for. No one else has to believe it. What matters is that you do. You have lived long enough to know that life can be unpredictable, that hardship can come without warning. But you have also learned that you are never left to face it alone. Every feather, every song, every repeating number, every perfectly timed conversation is proof that you are surrounded by unseen support. It is proof that no matter how overwhelming your challenges feel, there is always help. There is always hope. There is always love. When you look back over your life, you will see a trail of these signs marking your path like lanterns in the dark. You will remember the moments when you felt lost, only to have something appear that made you feel found again. You will remember how every time you needed reassurance, it came to you in a way no one else could have arranged. Those memories are your evidence. They are your reminders that you are protected. If you ever start to doubt, if you ever start to wonder whether any of it was real, pause and remember all the times you asked for a sign and received one. Remember how it felt when the message arrived, how it lifted your spirit, how it renewed your strength. Let that memory be your anchor. Let it remind you that meaningful signs are not a fantasy. They are love in action. They are the language of angels. They are the proof that you are never walking this journey alone. Miraculous timing is the kind of experience that leaves you standing in quiet awe. The kind of moment when you realize something beyond your understanding has intervened on your behalf. You could spend a lifetime trying to plan, predict, and control every outcome. And still, you would never be able to create the perfect, almost impossible timing that happens when angels are working behind the scenes. When you are the woman whose house angels guard, you start to recognize how often things have aligned in ways you could never have orchestrated on your own. You see how divine timing has been woven through the story of your life, showing up in the very moments you needed it most. It might be that phone call you received just as you were about to give up. You were sitting alone, feeling like no one would ever understand the weight you were carrying, and then the phone rang. On the other end of the line was a voice that reminded you that you mattered, that you were loved, that you were not forgotten. You may have thought it was simply luck, but deep down you felt it was more than that. It was a perfect moment arranged for you. It was miraculous timing that restored your faith when you were ready to surrender to hopelessness. There are times when the help you need comes at the very last second, as if heaven waits until you are certain there is no way forward, and then suddenly the door opens. Maybe you were about to lose your home, and an unexpected check arrived in the mail. Maybe you were searching desperately for a job, and just before your resources ran out, an offer came through. Maybe you were at the edge of despair, and someone showed up with exactly the wisdom or encouragement you needed to keep going. When these moments happen, you feel the undeniable truth that you are being watched over, that your struggle has been seen and answered in the most precise, loving way. Sometimes miraculous timing shows itself in moments of protection you only understand later. You were delayed by a traffic jam that frustrated you, but because of that delay, you avoided an accident that happened on your usual route. You might have been disappointed when a plan fell through, but that disappointment became relief when you learned what you were spared. In those moments, you begin to see that what feels like an inconvenience can actually be divine intervention. You recognize that timing you couldn't have planned yourself is often what keeps you safe. Miraculous timing can look like meeting the right person exactly when you are ready for them. You may have been longing for love, for friendship, for someone who could see you and understand your heart, but it never seemed to work out. Then just when you had learned to be content on your own, you crossed paths with someone who fit into your life so seamlessly, it felt like they were always meant to be there. You look back on all the delays and disappointments that kept you apart before that moment and realize that every one of them was necessary to prepare you for this connection. You see that the timing wasn't late, it was perfect. Sometimes the miracles come in small moments that seem insignificant to everyone else. You may have been searching for an answer, asking for a sign that you were on the right path, and out of nowhere, a stranger said something that pierced straight into your soul. You may have opened a book to the exact page you needed to read, words that felt as though they were written just for you. You may have overheard a conversation that gave you the clarity you had been praying for. These moments are too precise to be random. They are signs of divine timing, carefully crafted to meet you in your moment of need. Miraculous timing also teaches you to trust the process of your life, even when you don't understand it. You begin to see that delays are not denial. You start to believe that closed doors are often redirections towards something better. You realize that just because you can't see how everything will come together doesn't mean it won't. Every time you look back and see how perfectly things align, your faith grows stronger. You become more willing to wait, more willing to surrender control, more willing to believe that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. When you've experienced miraculous timing, you stop calling things coincidences. You stop telling yourself that you are just lucky. You begin to see that you are guided by unseen hands that care for you more deeply than you can comprehend. You are protected by a presence that knows the end from the beginning, that can see every obstacle and every opportunity long before you do. That presence is what makes the impossible possible. Amen. It is what makes the unplanned perfect. It is what makes you feel safe even in the unknown. You may have moments when you doubt that this kind of timing will ever happen for you again. You may wonder if the miracles have run out, if you have used up all your good fortune. But every time you face a new challenge, you have the chance to remember all the times you thought the same thing before, and every time help still came. Every time the right door still opened. Every time the path still appeared beneath your feet just as you were about to give up. That is the power of miraculous timing. It doesn't depend on your worthiness or your ability to earn it. It depends on the love that never stops showing up for you. There are stories you will carry for the rest of your life about the moments when everything changed in an instant. The day you were offered exactly what you needed at exactly the right moment, the hour when you felt completely alone and then felt a peace that washed over you, reminding you that you are never abandoned. The night you prayed for a sign and woke up the next morning to find your answer waiting for you in a way you could never have imagined. These stories are sacred. They are reminders that you are held by something you can trust, even when you cannot see it. Miraculous timing is not always about dramatic rescues or life-changing opportunities. Sometimes it is as simple as having the right words come to you when you need to comfort someone you love. Sometimes it is a sudden burst of strength that helps you take one more step when you were certain you had nothing left to give. Sometimes it is the perfect moment of laughter in the middle of your grief, a reminder that joy is still alive within you. These are miracles too. They They are just as holy, just as important, just as worthy of gratitude. When you look for miraculous timing, you start to find it everywhere. You start to see how every detour, every delay, every unexpected twist has played a part in bringing you exactly where you need to be. You start to believe that even now, in this moment, something is aligning for your good, even if you can't see it yet. You feel less afraid of the future because you trust that you are not facing it alone. You know that whatever happens, the timing will be perfect. It always has been. It always will be. So when you look back over every moment you thought you wouldn't survive, every setback you thought would break you, every delay that felt like a punishment, remember this: you were never alone. You have been guided by unseen hands, protected by forces greater than your understanding, and lifted up by a love that has never wavered. The calm in your chaos was not weakness. It was a sign you were being held steady. The unseen warnings were not your imagination. They were messages meant to keep you safe. The meaningful signs that crossed your path were reminders that you are cherished beyond measure. And the miraculous timing that showed up right when you needed it most was proof that grace is never late. You are the woman whose house angels guard, whose life is marked by divine presence, whose story is woven with purpose. Walk forward knowing you are protected, guided, and loved now and always.